Okay, so today we're going to spend some time talking about plant classification. This is kind of a background so that you understand when we start talking about identifying trees later in the week, you understand some of the basics of why plants are classified the way they are. So, before we get started, first of all, plant taxonomy is also referred to as plant classification. Taxonomy is the science and system of naming plants. Okay, the scientific classification system is a system of binomial nomenclature. That's a big long phrase that just basically means two names, the genus and the species, which is what you've heard of before as the scientific name. These names are always in Latin. They were Latin was selected because it never changes. It's a dead language. So there's no new slang or new words added to it because nobody uses it worldwide as an active language. The scientific classification system was developed by Carolus Linnaeus back in the 1700s, and there's been a lot of tweaking, but the overall structure of the system remains the same. Interestingly, what I learned in high school from Mrs. Steen as a sophomore in biology is different than what's accepted now as the classification system, so I'll point out some of those things. So you've seen this the system, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. We're going to spend a little bit more time understanding how all of that fits together in reference to plants today. So I'm going to switch my screen and I put this together. Hopefully you can see it okay, but I am a person that thinks in terms of flowcharts. So I'm trying to put this visually in a way that maybe makes sense of all of those terms. So let's start with all living organisms. The first way that we break living organisms down in the classification system is into domains. So we have three main domains that we're going to look at. Those domains are the bacteria. Those are single-celled organisms that lack a cell wall. Archaea, which are also single-celled organisms, or that lack a nucleus. I'm sorry, both of those two, bacteria and archaea, lack a nucleus. Eukarya is the domain that we're most familiar with. These organisms are multicellular and have a nucleus. So this level right here is the domain level. Okay, when we break the eukarya domain down, now we're getting to the kingdom level. We've got plantae, fungi, animalia, and protista. We're focusing obviously on the plantae kingdom today, but you've talked about these other ones, I'm guessing, in biology class. Fungi would be like molds, mildews, yeast, animalia, all the common animals that we think of fit into this category: dogs, cats, cows, pigs. And then protista is a lot of other organisms that don't necessarily fit well in one of these other categories. So we're going to focus on the kingdom plantae. If we break the kingdom plantae down, so we know that it should be kingdom and then phylum. In plants, instead of calling it a phylum, we refer to it as a division. Okay, so we have the two divisions of Bryophyta and Tracheophyta. Okay, Bryophyta are things like mosses and ferns, less common plants. Tracheophyta are all of our higher plants. Okay, these are oftentimes the most common plants that we deal with. Okay, we can break this division or phylum, if that's a term that's more common, down into the classes of angiosperm and gymnosperm. Angiosperms are all of our flowering plants. So anything that produces a flower and subsequently a fruit fits into angiosperms. I think we talked about that earlier in the class a little bit. And so everything essentially that we worked with in class produces a fruit and a flower of some sort. Gymnosperms are usually cone-bearing plants, oftentimes referred to as naked seed. The seed is on the outside of the cone. It's not encased inside the fruit like it would be in an angiosperm. Okay, so now if you look here, we've got domain, kingdom, phylum or division, class, and then we have subclasses here of monocots and dicots, which we'll talk about in a little bit more detail here in a minute.